No, I'm going to be on the network soon.
All right. All right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Comics Della Morte, episode 99. One more to 100. And we
Right
have a
on.
brand new guest, Doc Blalock, of a great comic that I looked at, Pariah Blood and Mud. And
Yeah,
it's
baby.
and it's great to finally have him. And the first person watching is Pops. What's up, Pops? Thank you for sending me the link to get a hold of this gentleman onto the show because it was definitely needed.
Yeah. Pops is a good guy. Good guy. Oh, he says he wants a wrench
Yep.
so he can shoot the links. Oh,
So
hey, Pops, good to hear from you. I've been incommunicado all day, Ronnie. Uh,
yeah.
uh, we still digging out from under the tornado that hit us, and
Oh, where are you located at?
we're in just south of Atlanta.
Oh,
So
okay.
this was back at the end of January, believe it or not. But
Hmm.
it was catastrophic. So the short version is today there were contractors crawling all over my property, and I wasn't able to be productive today. So
Yeah.
instead, I'm chilling now. Couldn't chill during the day.
Gotcha. So before we show your trailer and everything, just let any of the new audience know exactly what your comic is all about.
All right, cool. Yeah, yeah, yes, exactly. Um, the book Pariah Blood and Mud is a three-part story. It's part one is Pariah
Mhm.
Blood and Mud. Part two is Pariah Sanctum of Hate, and part three is Pariah Garden of Malice. And
Mhm.
it is the story of a young lady who walks in on a mob murder, and she wants to do the right thing, so she agrees to turn state's evidence. She goes into protective custody to testify against the mob boss, but they find her and they give her the worst night of her life, cut her throat, and leave her for dead. But they should have made
Gotcha.
sure, because her name is Elizabeth Payne. Elizabeth is descended from a centuries old lineage of powerful witches. And
Okay.
so she survives and she comes back for her revenge. So the
Awesome.
blood is her bloodline. The mud is the 12-foot tall golem made out of good old swamp mud from actually my hometown is down in the South Carolina low country. So that's where I've got her coming from too, because it's just beautiful down there. And I wanted to put that in.
Yeah. Now you do the artwork besides the writing, right? Or you just do the writing? I think you do the
Uh,
artwork.
yeah, I've done all of it except for the coloring. And an old colorist friend of mine that I worked with back in the 90s has done some of the auxiliary inking on just a few pages.
Yeah. Well,
Just because we wanted to work together again.
yeah. It looks great. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yep.
Especially
So,
the golem there. I like how you introduce, like, she's a witch and she created a golem, because that's pretty much how golems work in folklore. So I
mhm,
like how you add that little touch to that.
yeah, there's a layer to it that the person who teaches her or helps her unlock her power is her
Mhm.
grandfather, not her grandmother. They don't know witch from warlock, whatever. It's just they call it the art.
Yeah.
And um, he actually creates the golem and sends it to rescue her and bring her
Gotcha.
home so he can heal her. But she manages to do the impossible and break the bond between the grandfather and the golem and subvert it to her command.
Hmm.
And so it becomes her servant in her quest for revenge.
Yeah, I like how also you have the sample pages here. how they have like the twines and the green coloring for the back. Really
Hmm.
nice.
Hmm. Yeah, that's my publisher's doing. He himself
Yeah.
is also an artist, so it's good to have him on the campaign.
Oh yeah, for sure. So with the Golem, did you have any inspiration on how you wanted him to look?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I love swamp monsters. Swamp Thing, Man Thing, the Heap.
Oh,
Doesn't matter.
sw-
I love them. And when I was writing it, and at first when I was creating the golem in my mind visually, it didn't look like this. It took 3 or 4 iterations to get him to where I wanted him. And finally, I merged him with a character I created that was called Atrox way back in
yeah.
the 90s. And so I kind of put Atrox's head on a big swamp monster's body, and then it was there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Bernie Ryson with his work, with Swamp Thing and all that, just
Hmm.
really inspiration. And I could see that there's like, the detail and everything. And yeah,
Hmm.
it would be great to see more swamp monsters because most of the times when you have golems in
Hmm.
like horror movies that I've seen, most of the time the golems are just like made of rock and stuff like that, the typical
Right.
ones you would like see instead of the
Right.
whole like swampland. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that different take to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I excuse me, from jump, I knew what I wanted him made of. If you've ever been
Hmm.
to, more people are familiar with the bayous than they are the Carolina Low Country, but they're
Okay, yeah.
basically the same kind of thing. The difference
Hmm.
is, the bayous have the big cypress trees, the Low Country has the live oaks with the Spanish moss. Other than that,
Yeah.
pretty much the same. But there's this rotten black mud that reeks like death. That is the
Hmm.
subsoil of those barrier islands, and I knew that's what I wanted this guy made of. Oddly enough, so that's what I was after with him.
Gotcha. Let me see if I could play this trailer.
Sure.
All right. Ah, stupid screen.
Revenge, the sweetest morsel to the mouth. That Yeah, check your volume.
Anybody hear that besides us? I don't know.
I can hear it as choppy.
It's not one of.
It's not wanting to behave itself. Revenge, the sweetest morsel to the mouth that ever was cooked in hell. Uh-oh, we're experiencing technical difficulties. The host has left me. He left me. He left me. I think he's restarting his StreamYard. Ideally, he should come right back on. Yep, I'm not going anywhere. I feel like I boarded a flight to the Bahamas and the pilot has died up front. And I'm sitting in the back sipping a daiquiri, not knowing what's going on in the cockpit. So here's the one joke that I know. Guy goes in the doctor's office with a frog on his head. The doctor says, "What's wrong with you?" And the frog says, "It started with a bump on my ass." Meanwhile, the plane, at least it's on autopilot until we have to land. It would be at that point that things would go terribly, terribly wrong.
I'm back. I did not know that it kicked me out. So I guess it was just a connection thing. I'm like, what happened?
Bosh just said, "This is it, the stream that makes Ronnie famous."
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that was weird. I guess it's just my connection or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Pop said, "Let him in, he'll play it and pop out."
Right.
I don't. I'm the least tech savvy person that I know, Ronnie. So
Yeah.
I am the most or the least qualified person to bail out a bad situation with technology.
Well, StreamYard is just so difficult to learn sometimes because they're always adding so much to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pops produces my show for me, so I've got
Yeah.
somebody that knows what they're doing backstage.
Oh
Hitting,
yeah, for
hitting
sure.
the buttons for me, and it just allows me to be my normal goofy self.
Mhm.
Thank God.
Yeah. But yeah,
Anyway,
I really enjoyed the trailer. Anybody who is watching it or watching afterwards, the trailer's in the description with all of his other links to his Twitter, YouTube channel. Just really great stuff. And
thank you.
again, thank you, Pops, for giving me his link because I literally tried to find out how to get a hold of you and I couldn't. So
and it's not like I'm trying to be a ghost.
yeah.
Ronnie was telling me backstage, boys and girls, that it's like I looked on your campaign page and couldn't find your social media. I'm like, well, I didn't build the page, but I will certainly get Anthony to put the at least put my Twitter up
Yeah.
there.
But yeah, so I love the music too. So exactly what time setting does this take place in?
It's here's the clues that you'll get. You'll see guys wearing clothing reminiscent of the 1940s, driving cars reminiscent of the early 60s, but they're using
Okay,
computers and cell phones.
gotcha.
I liked the aesthetic that the Batman animated series went for
Oh my gosh, yes.
with that high technology, but that pre-World War II looking architecture, Art Deco, all that good stuff.
Oh
So I
yeah.
thought that's a great idea. That allows me to incorporate all my favorite visuals into
Mhm.
this.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, back then, that's what people were doing to, oh, back in when we get to the 2000s or whatnot, we're going to be having flying cars. So, way back then, they always had movies to depict what the future was going to look like. So why not have
Exactly.
an alternate universe where it looks like that? That's why people love the whole steampunk look.
Yes, exactly right. In this, I wanted to combine a little pinch of horror, a little pinch of noir, a
Hmm.
little pinch of the comic books we got back in the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah.
Uh, just really able to bring in all those flavors. Consider it a huge nod to my nostalgia.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, for anybody who checks out the Kickstarter or the video, like you have a lot of scenes where, like, where the horror is there, the shock value. I could look at that. I'm like, okay, there's some pieces of artwork that has like the old school EC comics, like take on it, where like the guy's screaming and then you just have a close up on his face, like you would see with the Tales of the Crypt or anything like that with the comics
Yes,
back then.
yes,
So yeah.
yeah. That was the beauty of how do I even say this? When I was making this amalgam of flavors, it was I
Hmm.
want that off-screen horror that you would get in the old EC and even in the old horror movies.
Oh yeah,
mixed
for
with
sure.
a little bit of the graphic stuff you would get with a Nightmare on Elm Street or Image Comics in the 90s.
Hmm.
Why not mix it all together?
Yeah.
A little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I mean, we'll get in more into it, but that's probably a lot of things why a lot of horror movies now are not scary and they're just, gory and looking for a shock value
Right.
because they're just looking for the biggest like way to make you turn your head in disgust instead of the whole
Yes.
suspense of making you be at the
Right.
edge of your seat.
Right. I always preferred in my horror, uh, I preferred suspense
Hmm.
and that building inside your imagination much more than the graphic gore of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
So with
think
oh, go
about
ahead.
I was just going to say, think about that classic scene where Janet Leigh gets stabbed in Psycho. The
Oh
curtain
yeah.
opens, you see the
Hmm.
silhouetted figure, you see the reaction, the scream,
And the
and then
blood going down the drain. Yeah.
you just see blood going down the drain.
Hmm.
How perfectly shot is that scene?
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's the whole great about horror comics. I mean, sure you could do with other comics, but what I love about horror comics so much is that you could have a couple pages where you don't have to have dialogue at all and just have
right?
scenes like that with the artwork, and it
Yes,
just puts you on the edge of your seat as a reader where you're wanting to read more to just find out what happened. Because yeah, a lot of superhero comics, you have dialogue and then you get to the action scenes. But you
hmm,
could probably get away with writing like a 6-page miniseries horror comic where it's just nothing but suspense of someone running away from something. But
sure.
that's why a lot of EC Comics, one of their greatest things that they had going on was the whole anthologies of the mini stories.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And my buddy Rex is doing that. He's got a horror. Well, not a horror. He has an anthology that includes some horror,
Hmm.
and it's a throwback to that stuff. He's calling it Crawl Space, which I think is an
Nice.
amazing name for a
Oh
project.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, and I did 10 pages for him in that one of his swamp monster. Uh, he's like, you didn't have to ask me twice. It's a swamp monster. I'm in.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Pariah. When I first started it, the story has stayed the same, but
Hmm.
um, you know, I started leaning into in the first book we get kind of the traditional comic book look of the, like you said, some of the EC, some of the early or I should say mid late 70s, early 80s type visuals. And then in book two, it really starts leaning into the noir look,
Gotcha.
um, I'm just a huge fan of. Like
Oh
my all time
yeah.
favorite movie is Casablanca.
Oh,
If
classic.
Yeah, if ever there was a movie that was told through its lighting, it's that movie. It's
Well,
just
that's the
amazing.
great thing about noir too. You could have it a noir comic where basically the detective's trying to track down a serial killer and make it into a horror comic, but it has that noir take to it as well. That's what
Hmm,
a lot of people don't really think about. But yeah, you could do that. That's
hmm,
the whole thing I love about horror comics is that you have so many subgenres. You could write a horror comic that's a sci-fi. You could write a horror comic that's
sure,
a slasher, or one that's like a dark fantasy.
sure, absolutely, yeah. In the second installment, which I can't wait to get book one funded and fulfilled so book two can
Mhm.
launch. We partially follow the story through the police trying to figure out who the serial killer is that's killing these mobsters in these
Oh,
horrible
that's
and
awesome.
grotesque ways.
Yeah.
And of course, we know it's Elizabeth that's
Hmm.
doing it, but there's no modus operandi. Every death is different and
Yeah.
horrific. The only thing they have in common is they're impossible ways to die.
Gotcha. And see, that's what I like about it too, is that this comic, you're going with, people are being killed, but the people are being killed aren't really the victims. You
Right.
know, it's
Right.
a revenge story.
Yes. Yes. And that actually, hey, Tarks, good to see you. That brings it to what I've been doing lately. Excuse me. I had always said I wasn't going to launch the campaign until I was completely done with everything that
Hmm.
I could do as the writer and artist on the book. And I kept that word. But then as I was looking at, my publisher, he's got all the pages, and I'm messing around with book 2 because, we had to edit it. It was originally one long book. When
Yeah.
you break it into 3 parts, that requires some edits.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
that,
for
that
sure.
gave me the opportunity to kind of look, and I realized something, Ronnie. The sexual assault and attempted murder they do to her
Hmm.
is so reprehensible to me as an adult male that I went through it as quick as I could. Like, just hold your nose and get through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as I'm doing book 2, when she starts going for her revenge and some of the things that she does, like, no, I've got to go back and make that original scene, what happens to her, much more horrible
Hmm.
to justify for our reader what she does for her revenge.
Yeah.
Uh, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Oh, of course.
So I needed that impetus to be much greater. So that it gave me the opportunity to go back and revisit that and expand on it. It's not graphic. You're not going to see pulsing members or any of that stuff. But, you know, uh, I had to create just what for our heroine here was the absolute worst possible night a person could go through.
Oh yeah, I definitely understand that. I mean, with my horror comic,
Mm-hmm.
the main character is the son of the devil,
Mm.
but his mother was an innocent woman that was captured by a cult, and then the devil basically raped her when Haley's Comet was going by. But we'll talk
Ooh,
about that after the
yeah.
show about mine. But we're talking about your stuff. But I definitely understand what it's like where
Yes,
you
see, I
don't
got to
want to
get you out
put,
on my show where we can talk about yours.
yeah, where you don't want to make it too graphic, but you want to
Right.
know why this person is doing that.
Yeah.
And even like with Stephen King or any person that's writing like a horror comic or even just a noir comic,
Hmm. Hmm.
you want the reader to be interested, but sometimes with our type of work, unlike superhero stuff, you're going to have scenes where it's very graphic, but you're trying to tell why the person is so revengeful to kill these people in the first
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. What must happen to a human being to break them so thoroughly?
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
spent my working life as a counselor, and I did a lot of work with victims of all kinds of things.
Hmm.
No need to go into details. You fill in the blanks. I've seen it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Um, so in that respect, we see a lot of the PTSD stuff happening with Elizabeth,
Yeah.
but there's also a catharsis there
Hmm.
because there's not a person that's ever going to hear me talk right now or ever that hasn't been wronged by somebody and wished they could get some just righteous revenge. You
I
know,
understand that.
yeah, and
I'm going through that with the company, but that's a different
yeah,
story.
yes, but it happens to everybody.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying, oh, somebody cut me off in traffic. I wish I could drop a Acme Roadrunner, 2-ton weight on the car in front of me. We're talking about
Yeah.
when you're legitimately someone has wronged you, but you
Hmm.
do not have recourse. There's just nothing you can do about it. We've all
Yeah.
been there.
Oh, yeah.
And in Elizabeth's case, she can do something about it.
Hmm.
But she has to have an impetus, Ronnie, to go back and do that. So, our story takes us to her back at home, away from the big city, away from the mob, and she's pretty much living that PTSD. She doesn't want to leave the house. She doesn't want to go out. She's terrified of everybody. Uh, Even as she's training and unlocking her power, she's still terrified. So we had to create an event that, on the one hand, would uh, give her the impetus to go back to the city and
Yeah.
get after this revenge thing that she desperately needs and wants. But on the other hand, it needed to at the same time show how broken she is.
Hmm.
And we were able to pull that off. I don't want to spoil it with anything. But yeah, at the end of the book, at the end of book one, we see her just snap and she becomes that pariah, that outcast, totally outside of any kind of acceptable uh, sense of society.
Yeah. Gotcha. It definitely piques my interest, not just the artwork, but just hearing about the story and just looking overall. It really piques my interest. So yeah, I gotta invest into it.
Oh, outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Tarks, I think Tarks got some original art, didn't you, Tarks? If I remember right. I'm blessed to have a publisher that kind of knows what he's doing, because I don't know how to do all that stuff
Oh,
on the
yeah. I
back end,
mean,
you know.
sure. Now there's so much like indie stuff out there, but that's the problem. So much is out there, you don't know where to start
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. Tarks got some of the original art. And I might throw you in a little something extra there, Tarks, because you were the first one to buy some original art. So I might give you I might throw in an extra trading card. I mean, not trading card, a sketch card for you. See, I don't even know the terminology, Ronnie. I mean, when we were building the campaign, Anthony said, "All right, we're going to do this, these trading cards for this." And I'm like, "Well, how many have I got to draw?" He says, "No, those are sketch cards." And
Right.
I'm like, "Okay, I don't even know what we're talking about now. I'll just draw what you tell me to draw."
So with the books, you said there's going to be how many books altogether to tell this story?
It's a three-parter,
Three-parter. Gotcha.
and when the story's done, it's done. It
Okay.
does have a twist ending that only 5 people know the ending, and all of them I've gotten a jaw drop out of them. So I know it's a, a riveting ending, but once it's done, it's done. But there are 3 characters in the story that will spin off into right on Tarks. That will spin off into some other properties that I have.
Oh,
Excuse
so
me,
you're going to
Elizabeth
have
Olsen.
spin-offs. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, but not a sequel. There will not be a sequel,
Gotcha.
because I mean, think about it. A revenge story. Once you kill everybody, what's there left to do?
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I don't tell me what the ending is, but it's one of those things. I mean, it's a revenge story, but I like it when horror movies, you don't always have the good guy that wins. That's
Right,
always great.
right, right. Yeah, this one does a well, I don't even want to go into it because it would give it away, but
Yeah, don't
it's
tell it.
definitely an ending that you won't see coming.
Gotcha.
I hope. I hope. No one has so far.
So, you were talking about that you've done work in the past. Like, where did you like how many comics have you done altogether in general?
Oh, I don't even know how many issues. I worked for 3 different little small press companies.
Okay.
Thank you, Tarks. I appreciate that. Back in the 90s. Now, this was when I was credentialing as a counselor. Needed
Mhm.
some extra money. I had gotten injured and I was laid up, so I couldn't work my normal job
Yeah.
to pay the bills. But I was like, well, hell, I can draw. So I sent submissions out to some of the small press, and I got hired by a few of them. And so I cranked those out. I did Assassinate, the Mind Stalker,
Okay.
and The Holy Night for Pocket Change. I did Alpha Strike and Mech 6 for Fusion Press. And there's one, I can't even remember the name of the publisher now. And it was kind of this bizarre, uh, almost like a LSD trip type book.
Hmm.
Did those in the 90s. And then, I got better. So I just quit doing it. But along the way, I've always done fine art. I'm an impressionist landscape painter.
Yeah, I've
And
seen those paintings.
oh,
Really
thank
nice
you.
work.
Yeah, that's my first love. even though George Perez, the great George Perez, is the one that got me to be interested in art in the first place.
Mhm.
I discovered painting, and I've done that pretty much nonstop. But then when two things happened. One, I got canceled by the fine art community that I created for being a toxic male.
Gotcha.
And then COVID hit, and you couldn't give a painting away.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I had super chatted Ethan, like just $5, and all I said, I'll never forget it. I said, I wish there was something like Comicsgate for fine artists because I've been canceled too.
Mhm.
And somehow he ended up going to my website and looking at my paintings on his show, and Arnie Bear was with him and Billy Tucci, and they oohed and awed over my paintings, and the chat went a little bit nuts, and they were like, wow, this dude's good. And Ethan said, I don't know what to tell you, man, do a comic book. And I remember I sat back and I just went, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Yeah, I mean, even now with you talking about that, like your main characters, you're focusing on them, but I could see like your like background detail, and I could see like the fine art there, because sometimes a lot of artist creators, they try to find ways to not make the whole like landscape or the whole backgrounds because it could be tedious work. But
Sure,
you know,
sure.
I like a good where comic where sometimes you turn the comic page, and instead of just focusing on the main character, like if it's a small town, you just see a big image of the small town and
Yeah,
appreciate that it's just not the main characters that's part of the
yeah,
story, but like where the place is at. And your story takes place in like, you're talking about the swamp areas. So that's a big of a character just as much as the girl is
sure,
in the golem.
sure, sure. And as a matter of fact, there's two scenes where the environment plays a very big role. But here's what's weird for me, Ronnie. I will
Mhm.
draw anything that grows naturally. I
Yeah.
hate drawing man-made things. I don't know why. I just do. I hate drawing
It's that fine
cars.
art side of you.
I hate drawing buildings. And yeah, and this was the thing. I was talking to Pops about this, and he knows. Um, when I do paintings, there are never people in my paintings. I mean, rarely I'll put somebody in there. It's
Yeah.
just the landscape because I with my paintings, I'm inviting you to see the scene as I saw it.
Hmm.
The exact opposite of that is when you're doing the comic books. It's all about the people, you
Yeah.
know. So it's not hard to make the transition, but it's a strange thing to wrap your brain around when you're creating images. To think
Mhm.
now it's got to be character driven, not place driven.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I mean, sure, I love comic books and all that stuff, but I'm in my bedroom, I have a bunch of pictures and a book from Van about Van Gogh's. I got Starry Night.
Oh yeah,
I'm a big fan of Bob Ross, so I have a Bob Ross pop figure.
there
So,
you go,
you
there you
know,
go. I've got a somebody. Invariably, if you're a painter, all your friends are going to throw the Bob Ross stuff at you.
yeah, yeah,
So
true.
I've got a collection of Bob Ross memorabilia, but I'm looking over my shoulder right now. It doesn't work anymore, but it's basically a key fob
Yeah.
that's got 5 little buttons on it, and you push them, and it's a Bob Ross saying, "Maybe there's a happy little tree where we
Yeah.
don't make mistakes."
Yeah.
It's dead now. I never even opened it. It was a sweet gift, so I've kept it in my studio while I was painting.
Mhm.
Uh, and of course, now that I'm drawing in here too, so sorry, I actually dropped my glasses.
No, it's all
Apologies.
right. So, do you feel that with you being having that fine art, that it's made you better to as a comic book artist because you know how to add those little details in your pictures that are necessary to bring out the picture better?
Sometimes, yeah. Sequential art is challenging
Hmm.
because you've got to know when to add more and when to pull back and put less.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
the
for sure. Especially with
the
the swamp creature, you want to add that environment to
Sure,
the creature to make the creature pop out more, but you don't want it to be so much where you can't tell its figure and how tall and the hands and everything are.
Hmm. I think the advantage is when I'm laying out pages, I lay out two at a time because that's how we see them in the comic book.
Hmm.
And I work out the design of the page before I worry about each individual panel. And there are certain fundamentals to art,
Yeah.
areas of high interest, areas at rest, leading the eye, all these things that go into composing. So I
Hmm.
work on that composition first. And I will never forget, as a matter of fact, Ronnie, wow, it just popped back in my head. Back in the 90s, I was doing a book. I can't remember which one it was, but the writer it was script first. So they're calling the shots. The panels are what they say.
Okay.
And so the bottom right panel of the left-hand page is a headshot of this dude talking. The bottom left panel of the right-hand page, headshot of the same dude talking. So it's the same dude's head touching each other at the bottom of the page in the center. And,
Don't.
it was enough where this was back when a long distance call cost you a fortune,
Yeah.
Uh, but I had to call him and say, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because here's what you've got going on." And there was no way to just take a picture and send it. This is before the internet.
Hmm.
And I finally got him to understand, and he said, "Well, just you do it the way you want to do it." And I was like, "Oh, thank God!" So I was able to redesign the next page to make it flow better. But
Yeah.
those are the things you got to be mindful of when you're constructing pages.
Hmm. You don't want it always to be bobbleheads.
Right? And even if it's a lot of talking, change your angles, break it up. Look down,
Yeah.
look up, look left, look right, pull back, zoom in, do something. You
Hmm.
know.
Exactly. Even with a scene, like if you're having people at a sitting down at a coffee table, have pictures where you might have the hand picking up the coffee and then you have the close up of the mouth taking a sip from the cup,
Sure.
just do
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Play with it. Have fun with
Hmm.
it. You know.
Exactly.
But never forget it's about that overall design. The
Yeah.
goal of your pictures are to tell a story. You're not trying to make the Mona Lisa with every
Yeah.
panel.
Exactly.
You're telling a story.
Hmm.
So my thinking is always what best serves the story. I just finished a panel. It's a group of people standing and we're looking down into the group. It's an interior shot. So, there's chairs and there's furniture.
Yeah.
And Ronnie, I screwed up one of the people. Like, oh, son of a bitch. And I
I
work
understand
traditional.
that.
So that means redraw the panel, Doc, because there's no control Z here.
Hmm. Yeah. So with drawing characters and people and everything, do you have like problems that you have, like how some people, oh, I have problems drawing hands or I have problems drawing feet? Or is it certain angles for you?
No, human form to me is really easy.
Hmm.
Uh, Organic shapes are easy. The things I find hard to do are making my cars look like cars
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of boxes with wheels. And
Hmm.
so I will lightly sketch them in, then I will lightly restate the lines with a ruler. But then when I ink them freehand
Hmm.
because there are no straight lines in nature. Let that brick wall have a little jaggedness to it. Let that car not be a razor sharp line.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way Ghost Rider was back in the 90s and the 80s. The
Oh, sure.
motorcycle there wasn't like a traditional looking motorcycle, but you had to
Right.
find ways to make it, pop out.
Sure. Sure.
Same thing with Jack Kirby and his vehicles, a lot of
Oh my
his
God.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I don't like, I don't enjoy, I shouldn't say I don't like, I don't enjoy doing like buildings and cars and
Yeah.
furniture and stuff like that. Not because it's hard, it's just tedious.
Oh, yeah, for
Because
sure.
one misplaced line, will screw all your perspective up, and that really it screams out to the viewer.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well,
hey, look
even
at that.
not, like, the lines, but, like, the position, like, how big something should look compared to the other.
Yeah, your proportions. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But the one thing I've never in my life drawn a rat before.
Yeah.
Never been a reason to draw a rat. Well, there's a panel where there's just a shit ton of rats.
Mhm.
I had a ball. Man, I bet I drew 100 rats all over this page. So yeah, you never know what you're going to be called upon to draw or
Yeah.
create in a book visually. That's going to just give you the big smile on your face while you're working.
And I know with your swamp area, you have a lot of water, but do you feel that it's easy for you to draw like water and movement, like rapid water at a very fast pace? I don't know if you have that going on in the comic at one point.
Yeah, almost anything natural is just it's very easy. It comes easily to me because I've done it for so long.
Hmm.
Um, Things that don't come naturally, again, it's that minutia. It's this chair that's a ladder back chair sitting under this table that's an Art Deco table in front of this bookcase.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's also the hard thing is when you're trying to do a period piece, you're trying to make it as close as to the period as possible by like what would typical furniture look like back then.
Right.
So
And we were
yeah, or clothing alone.
yeah. There's a scene in particular, Ronnie, that it's Elizabeth sitting at the kitchen table. Well, over her
Mhm.
shoulder, there's a hutch behind her.
Gotcha.
And I did that one on a live chat, and I asked everyone in the chat, tell me what's on your shelves. If you have a hutch or shelves in your kitchen or dining room, what's on your shelves? What's going on
Mhm.
these shelves? So I'll let them tell me because I'm not going to go draw what's in my pantry, or on my
Right.
shelves. I didn't want to get up.
I hear you. I hear you. That's awesome. So with you talked about like with the pass of doing everything. Do you ever So you pretty much write everything out first and then you do the artwork? Because I know some people like to do the marble way where they just have an idea and then do the artwork and then do the fill in the rest. You know?
Yeah. Now I don't work from a screenplay. I work
Hmm.
from a fluid outline where I know everything that's got to happen. And
Gotcha.
and so I will create checkpoints and I will build, like, say, there's this one particular scene that it's locked in, it's hard and fast. What
Hmm.
must happen to get to that scene and what would come after it, then I write that. And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
I refine it until I have a working story that's written almost like prose. And then I go in and I start doing my roughs and I block it in. How many panels will it take to do this? And, then you do your editing. Keep this, get rid of that. And then
Oh
I
yeah.
go for the
Because sometimes you never know, like, oh, well, this artwork doesn't work, so I had to add something else to it. I had to write it different.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
that's the whole point of comic books. Sometimes you need to go back and redraw something or rewrite something because once you draw it out, it
Sure.
doesn't flow as
It
good as
doesn't
you
do it.
thought.
It doesn't do it. If it doesn't serve the story, it's got to go.
Yeah.
And if it does serve the story, no matter how absurd it seems to,
Mhm.
to the writer side of my brain, the artist says, no, we got to have this. So I have to have those internal
Yeah,
battles
for sure.
between the writer and the artist. And sometimes the
Oh,
writer
yeah.
wins, sometimes the artist wins.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the difficult part when you're doing almost everything yourself because you're just fighting against yourself. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this whole big scene, but then I'm like, oh, I know that scene's gonna be awesome, but do I really want to draw the whole thing out?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
I remember I got
it can be
stuck on,
challenging when you're doing almost everything by yourself.
sure. I got stuck exactly once in this whole book. I had one panel that I didn't know what to do with at the end of this
Hmm.
page, but definitely needed another panel there. And I had all these stupid ideas. Nothing was working. I asked my buddy Rich Parada, and he goes, "Here's what you should do." And he just sketched something out real quick on a napkin. And I saw what he was going for. I went, okay, yeah, that works. I'll do that. So that's the other thing is, having this wonderful community of other creators around you, you can reach out and say, hey, what would you do here? You know, and get
Yeah.
that good feedback. You couldn't do that back in the day. I'm just going to tell you it was a strange world making comics before the internet.
I bet. I mean,
know
even
that.
when the internet started, you still had that whole dial-up internet and all that stuff. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. You think Jack and Stan and Steve Ditko, those guys were under one roof. They could talk to each other. They could show
Oh,
each
yeah.
other their pictures. But when I was doing them in the 90s, everything was FedEx and long distance phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And long distance was no joke, man. I mean, I remember I had a bill one month that was more than my mortgage. I'm like, holy cow, man, I can't afford to talk to the people I work with.
Well, even with cell phones, at one point, you had to, like, if you had T-Mobile and the other person had, like, Sprint, you couldn't talk to
Yeah.
each other until, like, after 9 p.m. to get
Yes.
free phone
Yes.
calls.
Yes, exactly right. Well, wait till after 9, then I'll call.
Right?
Now there's nothing. I can call a guy in California and use StreamYard. We can meet backstage, and
Yeah.
a guy in New Jersey jumps on with me, and we can meet and decide things just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
so that's the plus to all this. Plus crowdfunding,
Yeah.
really open the doors up.
Oh, yeah,
creators.
especially for a lot of indie people,
Yeah.
unless you had really good people to help promote you, like the creators of Ninja Turtles or Elf Quest. It was hard for indies to really get
Oh
noticed.
yeah.
But
It
now
was.
with the whole like crowdfunding and now the internet and all these social media platforms, it's just so sure. The problem is there's so much stuff out there to help people that
Yeah.
now it's flooded and it's hard to see everything. But
Yep.
on the bright side, it's easier to get your stuff out there than it was before.
Sure. Sure. If you've got 1,000 fantastic musicians in the same building, but
Mhm.
they're all playing something different, it becomes noise.
Yeah,
And
pretty much.
and that's kind of what we've got. There's and don't misunderstand me. There are so many great projects out there that I'm just in awe of,
Yeah.
and that I love, and I've been so inspired by. Uh, that it's like, who am I? You know.
Hmm.
Uh, but here's the neat thing: you don't have to be the best. Just be better than you were yesterday.
Exactly.
Somebody will like your stuff.
Oh,
Tell the
yeah.
story that you want to tell. Tell it well to the best of your ability, and follow through. Just deliver what you promise.
Yeah, there's everyone's going to have a fan base. That's the great thing about comics, just like with, horror movies or any
Mm-hmm.
type of movie, you're going to have your fans that just likes this type of genre.
Sure, sure. Not everybody likes the same music. Not everybody likes grits. I love me
Yeah.
some grits.
Oh, I had some cheesy grits the other day.
Ah, see, that means you're right with God.
Yeah. It's like, what was it? Like, I was having a discussion. Like, I'm not a fan of mushrooms, but the person doesn't like okra. I'm like, oh, I love some fried okra, especially
see,
homemade fried okra.
see, I knew you were right with God. Hell, I'll eat boiled okra. I ain't scared.
Yeah.
I'm Southern. But yeah,
That's awesome.
having the social media, I already had a YouTube station,
Hmm.
channel, whatever, for my fine art. It's still out there. It's Christopher Blalock Fine Art. Feel free, anybody listening, go over there and check it out. But I knew from Jump Street, because everyone said so, you're going to have an online presence, because you're not just marketing your art, you're marketing yourself.
Yeah.
And, that's the part of art, whether it's fine art or comic books, uh, I'm not that big of a fan of. I've shared this story many times. I don't like doing gallery openings, even when I'm the spotlight artist.
Hmm.
And the very first solo show exhibition that I ever had, I paid somebody to be me. I
Ah,
paid a
gotcha.
friend of mine to put on a tuxedo and go drink champagne and be pompous and talk to people about art.
I mean, that's
Because,
the thing with art, a lot of artists, they go, I mean, I never went to art school and everything. I was pretty much just self-taught and learning. But a lot of artists, they go to all these fancy schools and everything, but then they come out of school and they don't know how to be the business person.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly right. Exactly. And I teach art. I teach at an art school.
mhm.
When I retired from counseling, I started doing that, and I love it. I love teaching, and I will go and support my students when they have showings. But when I have a showing, I don't enjoy it, but I enjoy meeting people and talking to them, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
of course.
I like talking to people, but I don't like when they come up and they go, "This painting really speaks to me," blah, 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 and they get all pretentious. And I just want to go, "Man, it's just a tree. It's a tree. There's no message. There's no deeper meaning. It's a tree."
Yeah, right.
But when I talk about my story that I'm doing here, I enjoy doing that. I
Of
enjoy hanging
course.
out with friends on streams and talking. But then when it's time to shill, I'm not very good at it. I'm just not. So I'm thankful for people like Pops, who's a promoter, and Nita Lanning's a promoter, and Red Valkyrie and Anthony Romano. They're good promoters, and I'm thankful that there's people like that that enjoy doing that, because I'm
Yeah.
not one of them.
Yeah, it's like when I had Pops on the show and everything, I was saying that comic book artists, either they're the writer or the artist that's doing it, even if they're inker or just the colors, we are like wrestling. You have the wrestlers, but then you need the managers and the promoters to help give these people that like charisma
Yeah,
to really get them going, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. You have to love what you do, and
Hmm.
I know Pops well. He loves promoting people. He loves to see people succeed, and
Yeah.
that's the kick he gets out of it. I will co-host the show with him, and I enjoy talking to the creators. But
Hmm.
I'm just not good at going, "Hey, go back my book," because
Right.
other than saying "back my book," what else am I going to say?
Yeah, because I mean, you want to make money off of this. You want to do it for a living, but you don't want to seem like you're pushing people to just buy your stuff because you want people to want to buy it
Sure,
because they're interested in the story and the artwork, not just because you're, you know, saying, buy this, buy this.
you're right, right, right. Do you remember? I don't know if you ever watched the Andy Griffith Show,
Yeah,
but
I watched
there,
it with my father.
yeah, there was a salesman. He was a street peddler, and he didn't want to be pushy. It was the guy that did the original Winnie the Pooh voice, and I don't want
Yeah.
to be a pushy salesman. And
Hmm.
he would just sell things left and right because he didn't want to be pushy. Um,
Yeah.
that's me. I'm not going to be pushy. I would love it if you would back my project and get yourself a copy of this book, but I don't want to push it.
Hmm.
Don't not buy that pizza that you wanted for your kids. Get the pizza, and then if you got the money left over, go back the book.
Right. I hear you. I hear you. Well, it's getting close to the hour mark, so pretty much I don't know if any I mean Pops is in the chat and your tracks, they pretty much know anything about your book. But yeah, I guess at this point if we want to get into like the questions part. So, and I know you answer this question, but we could go into more detail. Like what is one of your favorite horror movies of all time?
Salem's Lot is my favorite of all time. The other one that scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid was The Blob. Um,
The 1950s, yeah.
yes, yes, sweet Jesus, that thing scared the soul out of me.
I mean, the 1980s was good too, but yeah, the 1950s for that time period of what they did was
Hmm.
really great. And
Yeah,
I can't remember if it was the 50s or 60s they did it because I know Matinee, the movie, was based off of a true story, but I kind of really miss when you go to movie theaters and they don't have like someone running around in a costume or they don't have
right.
the seats like vibrating to give it that extra like
Yeah,
scare.
yeah, yeah. Excuse me. I remember uh, movies that just that you thrilled at the fright
Hmm.
were things like the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno, those Irwin Allen disaster movies. You know,
Oh yeah.
the suspense would just get you. Um, the Blob was great. Salem's Lot was great, and
Hmm.
there was another one. Oh, and yeah, The Exorcist,
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
and right
That-
behind that, The Omen. You
oh
know,
yes. Hmm.
Damien scared the shit out of me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the music was really cool too. So there's
Oh
that.
yeah. That definitely is a plus. If you have a good musical score, the movie's just going to be so much better.
Hmm. Hmm.
At least I think it is because you have a lot of movies that like not the remake, but the one that took place in the '90s for Stephen King's It. Just the music score for that
Hmm.
movie was just really well,
Yeah,
and yeah, especially with the suspense scenes where you have that music really trying to set the scene, it can really add that extra fear to it.
yeah, yeah. Now, I tell you, first of all, my wife owns everything Stephen King ever wrote, and
Gotcha.
she's got a lot of the other guys. Was it Clive Owen and there's another one. Anyway, she's got all of them,
Hmm.
and she's seen everything that's been produced. I loved Christine,
Okay, yeah, yeah, gotcha.
but here's the thing about Christine, at least the movie. Um, this was a guy who was getting revenge, and we were talking about this backstage. Um, and he goes too far. He
Hmm.
goes above and beyond. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He crosses the line into evil, and of course, led there by the evil spirit of the car. You know,
yeah.
and that's the balancing act that you really want to do in a revenge story.
Hmm.
And what I leaned on for this for a lot of inspiration was Without Remorse by Tom Clancy. Great revenge story. Read it if you haven't. Oh my God, it's amazing. But an individual so out for revenge and so capable of dishing out that revenge that the biggest enemy he's fighting is he going to lose himself in the process?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's the line I wanted to walk with Elizabeth in this book.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's the problem with revenge stories. We get carried away with so much of taking revenge, we forget that we lose ourselves and become almost just as bad as they are.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and think about Christine, because the little fella that owns the car, he does become as bad or worse, you know.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
there's a great line in Without Remorse when it's a Navy SEAL's girlfriend was brutally murdered, and he's going after these druggies that killed her.
Mhm.
Well, he confides in this old admiral that has taken an interest in his campaign, in his career, excuse me. And he says, John, just remember what they say when you set out for revenge: dig two graves. And John doesn't miss a beat. He looks the admiral out and he says, just two. And I was like, oh, that was a powerful line. That was well written.
Yeah.
Just two,
Hmm.
meaning I'm going to leave a trail of bodies behind me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's the kind of writing that does it for me. Is when you can speak a volume with two words.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely is powerful when you really sit down and think about it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, now you got to tell me. I've told you. What do you think is just the apex of a good horror movie?
With me, it's just, the story and the suspense of it. I mean, I I hate when the killer is revealed too soon,
Hmm.
and I hate when they're just trying to go for more of a shock value instead of like telling a good story.
Yeah.
or, you know, I always talk about it. Sometimes a lot of horror movies today, they're just looking for that shock value. Like,
Yeah.
sure, the Exorcist, it made people puke, but
Yes.
it made them puke in a terrifying way. Sure, the vomit and everything that didn't add, but some scenes were very like graphic. But then you have like, and again, I always talk about it with my guests. I hate the Human Centipede. It's a horror movie that's just created to make you puke
Yeah. That's
because
just, it's just
there's
gross.
no there's no like scare factor to it.
No, it's just gross. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And you think about the slasher movies, they Michael Myers, when done well,
Hmm.
is great. Big spooky guy with an expressionless mask standing in the hedgerow. That's
Yeah.
horrifying. I don't need to see him slit somebody's throat. I need to see him leave a building and there's a corpse inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I got to see.
I mean, I don't know who your favorite slasher is. We'll get into that. But I'm a big Freddy Krueger fan. But
Yes,
the
Freddy.
cool thing about Freddy is that a lot of his kills aren't done. Yeah, sure, some of them are like gross, but they're done in a creative way too.
Yes.
Like with Dream Master, the fourth movie where the girl turns into the cockroach and then he squishes her in the cockroach box.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
very just a creative way, you
Yeah.
know.
The Freddy was my favorite for a very long time.
Hmm.
I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street when I was on active duty in the military. And the idea was so novel that he kills you in your dreams.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and there was that scene in the original where he drags the knives down the pipes and whee makes the squeaking,
Yeah.
Well, I went home and a limb went across my roof. Whee! I sat up for an hour.
That's
But
funny.
the scene that made that movie to me was when Nancy wakes up and she has Freddy's hat
Oh
that she
yeah.
pulled off of his head. I went,
Mhm.
that was great writing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Where it just gives you that extra value that it's reality. And it
Yeah.
just gives you that whole thing like maybe I was sleepwalking, but there was times that in the past as a kid or a teenager where I would be dreaming that I'm falling in my sleep and I wake up and I bounce on my bed. But in
Yeah.
the past I used to dream walk. So maybe when I was dream walking or dream standing, I was standing up on my bed and then fell backwards. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it, things like that really get to you and just makes it even more appealing with the whole is like if you fall in your sleep, does that mean you die in the real world? And
Right. Right.
that was the whole great idea with the first movie with whole Freddy Krueger thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about real world phenomenon like sleep paralysis, night terrors.
Hmm.
There's even a thing called exploding head syndrome. Uh, People's heads don't really explode, but they hear a deafening explosion in their sleep
Yeah.
and they feel a concussion, a concussive force hit them in the head and they wake up and they're paralyzed for a second and then it's over.
Hmm.
Uh, so, these things are real. They really happen. And
Yeah.
for a writer to go, I wonder if I can just take this and tie it all into this story about this guy that lives in people's nightmares.
Yeah. And it's amazing that no one really thought about that before to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
level.
yeah. So yeah, Freddie was my boy for the first one.
Hmm.
I really liked Michael Myers, even though I I don't think it's ever really been done 100% great. I did like the Rob Zombie original, the remake that he did. I
Okay.
enjoyed it. But there was just something about that character. He's not running. He's not this athlete. If they would just have left it where I think that people who enjoy horror have a vivid enough imagination where the more you leave to the imagination, the greater the thrill they're going to get,
Yeah.
because their imagination is so much more powerful than anything you could show on screen.
Hmm. Exactly. Especially with the first one where, she's like sitting down on the couch, I believe, or I can't remember, but all of a sudden you think he's dead, and then he just does the whole Undertaker sitting up thing
Yes,
and
yes,
walk towards her. Yeah, so
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's just what's terrifying. Or like the doctor's like, I shot him, and then his body's just gone.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, there's I don't think there's any such thing as someone pulling off something that will please everybody. That's impossible.
Yeah.
But there's so much good stuff out there, and
Hmm.
that's in every genre, every
Oh
genre.
yeah, for sure.
Um, I guess the best that we can hope for as creators is just kind of what Stephen Brush says. He's the writer of the Vlad Telltale series since the '80s. He said above his computer, he just has a sign. It's a wood burned sign that says, "Now I'm going to tell you something cool." He goes, "I think swords and cloaks and musketeers are cool. So somewhere out there's got to be somebody that shares my belief that this stuff is cool. So that's what I'm going to write."
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of the thing. You can't please everybody. So do the stuff that you think is cool. Tell the best story you can tell, and just tell it well.
Facts. Well, we're past the 1 hour mark. It's been great to have you on the show. Definitely come
Oh,
on
I
again in
enjoy
the
it.
past. Even if you're not here to promote stuff, sometimes I
Sure.
like just do a random like horror topic. Like in the past, like me and my co-hosts and other people talk about like just random like werewolf movies or anything like that.
Hmm. Yeah, sure, sure. And got to get you to come out on my show sometime and talk about your creative projects, and
Oh,
and
most definitely.
get you out there. But I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed it. It's a good conversation.
Awesome. Glad. Everybody watching now or watching afterwards, check out Doc's book. It's really good from what I've seen, and you guys just listening to it, you could tell it's a great story. Pops, thank you for stopping by. Trax, thank you for stopping by. And you all have a good weekend. See y'all next week. Peace.
Peace out.